Good morning, one and all. This is Pawan, Placement Officer from KCG College of Technology. Before formally introducing the expert speaker for today, we would like to give up a couple of instructions before this. So, if you have any question or answer, please post it up in the Q&A box, which is there right below, which should be answered by the guest speaker at the end of the session. If you have any issues with related related to the broadcasting, please put it up in the chat box so that the host can look into it. Now I request our HOD of Computer Science and Engineering, Dr. M. Krishnamurthy, to please introduce the chief guest. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, Ms. Goushalya Kothai Nachiar, Practice Head, Analytics and App Development, AMTEX, who is going to talk to us about the roadmap for an aspiring data scientist in this digital industry series conducted by Department of Computer Science and Engineering, KCG College of Technology, Chennai. Ms. Goushalya Kothai Nachiar is a data science practitioner and a certified blockchain expert with 12 years of progressive global experience during leadership at global multi-product consulting organizations. She started her career with HCL Technologies and worked in expertise BA and analytics implementation projects across insurance and life science domain for 8 years. She also worked for the business stakeholders involved in clinical trials for multinational pharma companies in US. In 2015, she joined in Oracle Partner Organization to demonstrate competencies in practice leadership, handling advanced analytics portfolio. Since July 2019, she is working in a Salesforce partner organization, heading their analytics and app development practices. Under her knowledge and capability at every opportunity possible to promote various tech community events, mentor student groups, and advocates gender equality. She also served as a career team members in few communities, also a regular guest faculty at a premier institution in and around Chennai. With this introduction, I invite our speaker over to Goushalya Kothai Nachiar. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much for the kind words, sir. It's a pleasure to reconnect with all of you, and I'm really feeling honored to be a part of the Digital Industry Series talks. And thank you so much, Palaniyappan sir, for the invite, and to the management of KCG College of Technology for putting this across and reaching out to a broader audience. All right, so today I'm going to talk through the roadmap for being an aspiring data scientist. So we're going to talk with respect to what this field of data science is and what is the hype that it is kind of getting into, and where do we get started. So I'm hearing a lot of data enthusiasts reaching out to how do we get started, where do we kind of go forward, and what are all these sequences that we need to kind of proceed with. So this session is going to take you through that journey. And so let's have all the questions towards the end. I'll also leave all my handles, and I'll be glad to kind of take up any further, if you need any kind of help with moving forward as well, I'll be very glad to take that. Now, with that said, let's delve into the session. So am I audible enough, sir? Can you please confirm?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay.
You can continue.
Great. All right. So since I'm going to be between you and the lunch, I have a quick disclaimer over here, just to be on the safer side. Okay. So I've tried my best to make this session as much as interesting But like I said, I leave all my handles towards the end. And if there are any further questions, and if there is anything specific area that you want me to drill through, would be glad to take an offline conversation as well. All right, so before we understand the roadmap, let's quickly look into a small timeline of the key milestones in the field of data science. So here are we right now in 2020. We are talking about data science getting into mainstream from the academicians. Now there is a lot of adoption that's going around. Lot of data science platform. There is a lot of advancement that has happened in that. And from artificial intelligence and machine learning, we have blended that to become machine intelligence and taking it forward with respect to decision intelligence. And how can you take that to the next step is what everybody is kind of heading towards. And data science and like an embedded AI and ML solution has become the most cliched Silicon Valley motto of providing solutions for the better future. That's how they're kind of putting it across as well, right? So this is where we are right now in 2020, where we are seeing a lot of courses being offered. There's a lot of kind of materials that are out there giving you the directions, and so many organizations are kind of getting into the adoption of it from analytics and moving towards data science solutions. Now, if you take a little behind 2014, we had AlphaGo, Google's AI solution, which kind of bet the Go World champion Lee Sedol. And this was one key milestone that I wanted to kind of highlight. And also about 17 years prior to that, we had IBM supercomputer Deep Blue, which bet the world chess champion Gary Kasparov in a 6-game match, right? If you look at these two milestones, you might wonder, what is that so interesting about, okay, a game being played by a machine and kind of proving its kind of power, right? Now, if you look at these two events, this is very significant in this field of data science. Now, what Deep Blue was specialized in is because it had expert system trained to play the game. Now, chess is always about who makes the future move forward, right? That's what we're looking at. Now, when we're talking about Go, kind of a game like Go, it is far more complex than chess, because even for a expert and novice player, it is a lot more of sense of intuition that they have to put into to kind of move forward. Now, that is a significant difference between how these games have been played and how machines have been able to kind of prove their superpower over human intelligence, right? So this is something significant as a development that we have seen, where we have training systems in the previous aspect, and now we are looking at systems which can train itself and come up with the intuition like similar to human. So it's about stimulating the human intelligence and taking decisions. Now, this is on the game aspect. Now, if you put the same capability into so many other fields, the aspects that it can offer, the applications that it can serve is to leaps and bounds. And that's what is more fascinating, that every organization is kind of looking into jump into this bandwagon and move forward. Now, other significant milestones in this timeline over here is in 2012, where data scientist was called as the sexiest job of 21st century. And that was by DJ Patel and David. And then we also had the term was actually coined somewhere in 2006. So these are some significant milestones that we're talking about. And now every product that we have in the analytics space, we're talking about everything having a kind of an infused ML or embedded ML solution. And also kind of looking into, we're also having services like data science as a service as well. So there's so much of kind of evolution that we've come across. Now, this is to give a perspective of where we are. Now, if you look at the projections, the big data and business analytic market is projected to reach of about like $500 billion by 2026. And if you look at pause and ask a question, has this figure changed because of COVID? Yes, a little bit, but still these are strategic initiatives. And what we are seeing right now is organizations have started to kind of look into the operational decisions and see if they can kind of those are the ones which are taking a relook at and maybe pausing for temporary, and kind of that might bounce back. But the strategic initiatives are still kind of moving forward, and they're proceeding forward with calculated measures. Now, the field of data science and all the streams of analytics, be it a descriptive flavor or a predictive flavor, or be it any flavor of analytic approaches that we are seeing, all comes under the strategic bucket. And that is something as a way forward that they're looking at to accelerate the growth. So this number is definitely going to kind of be something exciting. So the market around this, the job market around this, the demand around this is going to kind of keep increasing. Now, we talk about a lot of data. Now, the stream of data science revolves around data in a way, right? Now, if you take a look back, right, it has completely changed the way we live and work. Now, depending upon your viewpoint, we are either entering into something extremely interesting, like what we're seeing in fiction movies, Hollywood movies, and all of it, where every actions can kind of it's like a fascinating world that we are living. And the other aspect is, it is also a little bit scary, where every action is kind of predicted and kind of tracked in a way, right? Because we leave a lot of digital trail around us. Either it is browsing online, or be it with respect to sending an email, shopping in a brick and mortar kind of a shop, where using your cards, looking into like something like reading an online article, or be it with respect to posting in social media, or even walking in the street with a vicinity of a CCTV around, right? In all of these, our data is being captured, and in some way it is kind of being used for tracking us and also predicting what actions we can do next. And all the products that we are seeing around, and all the kind of services that are coming around, like be it with respect to the ones like the Uber, Ola, or be it with respect to Zomato, or the kinds of OTT platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime, and be it with respect to the online shopping e-commerce platforms that we have, like Amazon's and the Flipkarts of the world, all of them in some way are trying to kind of play around with this data and give you personalized information in a way. So your decisions are kind of influenced, right? So in that aspect, if you're looking at it, just for example, if you're just taking the OTT platforms, right? Now with the current COVID situation, we are seeing that businesses, schools, public services have all moved online. And if somebody would have asked who is actually driving these digital transformation, it's not the CEO and CTO, it's actually COVID. Whoever had looked back on the cloud adoption and kind of had to kind of relook at all those strategy, are now just jumping into the bandwagon and moving forward, right? Now with this movement into kind of online platforms, what we are seeing is, like, while people are staying indoor, the demand for online learning, fitness, online kind of the digital consumption aspect itself, and be it with respect to social media, has drastically increased, exponentially increased. Now, just at the one, to give you a sense of these figures, right? Now, just the OTT platforms have about like 82 point kind of 2% of increase in their adoption in the last 1.5 month time frame. So that is pretty huge. And the number of users who are kind of active user standpoint as well has been drastically increased. Now they're looking at scalable solution. They're looking at how best they can keep the users engaged and all of that. In that standpoint, all these recommendation algorithms and all play a big, huge league over here, right? Now, if you're looking at it, a simple thing is, say I watched kind of Money Heist, Designated Survivors, or be it with respect to Narcos. These are some of the genre of series that I've been watching on Netflix. Out of the bloom, I also get recommendations to watch Never Ever Had, or be it with respect to Working Moms, or like 4 More Shots Please. These kind of genres are some of the things that I'm getting recommendation. I'm just kind of looking at it and what has these two genres to play in common. There's nothing in common between these two genres, but still I'm interested in looking at it, right? Now it is said that 75% of users who watch movies online in applications like Netflix and Amazon Prime are completely based on the recommendation that is underlying. So it's just fascinating. And even if there are any, it is not just these activity that kind of infuse this decision of like what shows to watch and all of it, but also the inactivity. If it is like a normal scenario where I'm taking an Uber app, when I'm trying to book an Uber app and I see the price is high, and then immediately I switch over to Ola and try to check the price, and suppose say Ola is cheaper, I make the booking, I move forward, I will continue to get messages from Uber telling that you were about to book this. Is the transaction, is the booking complete? Are you facing issues? They keep track of also my inactivity. So that also generates data in a way to kind of see how best you can kind of engage with the users. Now, so when you're talking about this data, it's not just about the quantitative and the qualitative measures that are out there. It's not just the numbers. We're talking about data in all sizes and shapes, structured, unstructured, be it with respect to, now we are dealing with a lot more of unstructured data. And it's not that we did not have all this in place prior to all these adoption into cloud, all these tools to handle and all of that. We did have data ever since our inception, right? But the power to handle it, the kind of capacity to kind of process it, harness it, that's the only advancement that we are seeing right now, which makes actually sense to kind of whip this data into shape and see what we can make out of it. So the entire things revolve around the aspect of what we are collecting, and in a business scenario as well, we are looking at what are all the touch points which will make an influence in the decisions that we need to make, rather than just being kind of guesses and estimate. How better can you go with actions based on the facts that you're bringing across? The other thing is about data actually talks about the intent. When you're solving it in a business scenario, when you're using it in a business scenario, or be it with respect to kind of any place where you're looking at data driven actions to be kind of drawn, we are looking at the intent of what we are trying to convey. It's not just because we have data, we have enough tools, we do fancy graphs and we put it across. We should kind of look into what is the analytics strategy that we are putting across. How are we measuring the success of the analytics strategy around? So there's a lot of things that we put into with the aspect to kind of understanding the intent of what this data is talking about, because it becomes very critical to understand, are we tracking the unknowns? Are we discovering the unknowns? So it's become all towards data story narration, because it has become more towards the aspect of data storytelling. So we have always been tweaked towards all of these story narrations. Now, what if the data is talking to you with respect to the facts and metrics from the situations that you're put into? So these are the things that are kind of playing in equations with respect to why there is so much of hype about the field of data science. Because underlying data science is, while we're talking about tools, while we're talking about different aspects of it, processes that are out there in data science, the underlying fundamental is data. And without that, you cannot kind of come up with anything better that you want to kind of add into the solutions that we're putting across, right? Now, so this need for actionable insights, if you're pausing and looking, are we suddenly jumping into the bandwagon of data science? No, we had business intelligence, we had analytics, we had advanced analytics, and data science is in evolution now. So organizations have always kind of invested into that. They invested into technology, and they were always looking into, they don't just invest without having a kind of aspect towards angle towards it, right? The angle would be somewhere to kind of increase the kind of the profit, bring in operational efficiencies, or be it with respect to decreasing the costs that they have. In what way a departmental solution or data mart solution or data science solutions can help out is what they have kind of looked into. So it's not something new that we are looking, it's only the approaches that we are handling with the data and the aspects of what additional benefits that we have with these tools and technologies that are playing around, the technological wave that is around has made a huge difference. And that's something, a reason for why we have this hype about the field of data science. Now, if you're looking at it now, we understand there is a hype, we understand there is huge data that is kind of that we are leaving around and all of that. But why, how did this suddenly become so much of data out there? We're talking about all the data that is generated in the last 2, 3, or be it 5 years was so much more than what from the inception of human mankind. We're looking at how did this all happen? We talk about having connected devices. We are talking about having the aspects of cloud adoption, compute storage network, the cost of that being low. And also with respect to users having a lot of choices, like the aspect of booking an app just for booking a travel aspect itself. I have Ola, Uber. If I have to book a place, order online for food, I have options for Swiggy, Zomato. If I have to kind of look at social media apps, I have multiple applications. Each one has its own way of doing things, but still I have options to kind of broadcast the messages that is there, right? So there are options. User has a lot of options. So it's the need for ensuring a personalized options to be given and more to kind of peak towards that is also increased. Now there is also a need to kind of look into, users are looking at anytime, anywhere, and any connected through anything, right? So the connected devices, that becomes something like a foundation. So it's everything is in our hand, in our palm, and so we can access everything. And that's one reason why we are leaving a lot of digital trail as well. Now organizations have also kind of started looking into how they can kind of leverage this analytics to move and bring out innovative solutions, right? There is stats which talks about only the organization which will start investing into these data strategies will kind of be a player in the market. So these kinds of statements gives a sense of why everybody is pushing towards moving or getting into the strategy of putting things together, and how analytics can accelerate the innovation and move forward. That is also something. And the other thing is the growing demand for data-driven innovations. So the aspect of the previous point and this is somewhere tied together, and we are looking at everything to be driven by data, decisions to be driven by data rather than, again, like guesstimates. So these are some factors which are kind of contributing to the exponential increase in the data and the flow of what we are seeing right now. Now, to give a sense, before we get into the aspects of where do we get started, let's get a sense of what this market looks like, right? Why this hype is there. Now, while we had this statement from Harvard's Business Review talking about data scientists being the sexiest job of the century, right? Now, one aspect is it is completely interdisciplinary, and it's not just one stream or discipline that we are looking at. And the fascination of how better can we come up with different kinds of solutions which did not have an access to in the past is something that is kind of interesting angle to look into. Now, while that is there, we are also seeing that there's a huge demand for data scientists and the supply is very less, because it is still an evolving stream. And if you're talking about have we got every pieces of the puzzle figured out? No, not yet. There are certain things we are kind of doing in a more of a trial and error aspect, and certain things which we have figured out really well as well, but it's still evolving. And there is step-by-step gradual movement that we are doing. Now, are we having something like what a role of a program manager, this is what they will do, this is what a product manager would do? Do we have something like a regular kind of a templatized responsibility chart put across for the data scientist? It is there, but not complete. Now, if you're looking at it, are we having all the checklists covered in that? Not yet. So there are so many things that are yet to be kind of figured out. And as we are seeing, there is a huge demand in the market for kind of hiring data scientists who have the right skills, who can kind of accelerate the growth that they are looking for. Now, to get to that, we are right now seeing a very shallow depth of knowledge that we are in the market. And while there are few experts, while there are a lot of aspiring or budding data scientists who are exploring or doing a lot of self-learning, and there is also kind of recommended aspect or a structured curriculum also in place, we still see that there is a shortage. And that is also something that you are kind of, that's one reason you're seeing that there's constant requirement that's flowing out in the market. Even in a situation like COVID, we're seeing a lot of requirements coming up for the data scientists in different organizations as well. Now, from academic, it has completely become mainstream. So that, I think we have seen enough evidences of that with all these products aspect as well, underlying how all these algorithms are controlling us. So that itself gets a sense of how it is completely moved into mainstream. Now, with every other technology stream, right, there is always this wave which swipes the entire thing out and a new technology comes into place. And similarly, right now, we are in a similar kind of wave right now. Now, the time is right, and we have all the kind of possibilities aligned in place. And so it's if you have to kind of, if you are kind of looking into whether or you should not jump into the bandwagon, I would say it's probably the right time. You have the enough kind of materials, you have the, it's not that we're going to do a lot of trial and error or knowing this skills will work, that skills will work, and all of it. To an extent, I think we have figured out, and we're kind of looking at what organizations are kind of looking at. There are so many courses, so many structured curriculums that are out there that's popping up, and access to information is even more easier now. So it's, if you're kind of looking at it, I would say it's the right time to kind of start jumping into this bandwagon. Now,
Vipin sir. Hello. Hello.
Sir,
Vipin
I
sir.
think, sir, I think the problem
The
should
audience.
be yeah.
Problem should be
Center issue.
issue.
I think she is logging in another ID, sir. So
I'm
some problem, yeah, with her.
so sorry,
okay.
sir.
No,
I
that's
got disconnected.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay, sir?
Okay. Yes.
Okay, sir. I'll
Okay.
continue sharing my screens once again. I'm not able to share my screen, sir, because the previous ID, I think it did not kind of.
Just a minute. Vipin sir, can you just cut off the old screen sharing, please?
I'm so sorry, had a power disruption here. Work from home issues.
That's okay, ma'am. It's quite common, you know. You're able to share the screen, ma'am?
I'm not able to share the screen, ma'am, because the previous one, previous ID is still sharing, right?
Yeah, can you try now?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I'm able to share now. Please confirm if you're able to see.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. I'm so sorry about the disruption.
No.
Okay, so we were just talking about the jobs that are out there and why this movement is towards. And now if you kind of consolidate from what we have seen so far, right, it's just like any other discipline, but the aspect which makes it interesting is the aspect of having tools and processes in place which will help you to kind of derive decisions and take actionable insights. So it's predominantly tying back to with respect to kind of deciphering insights out of data, and data science is a tool and a process which can help you to get there. So it's basically humongous data that you're talking about, and in what way can you derive insights out of the data to take the actions that are needed to move forward from the business standpoint or with respect to any aspect of data driven innovation that you're looking at. So this is a kind of a consolidated, or I would say a condensed version of what data science is. Now we are talking about algorithms, we're talking about a lot of statistics, play involved being with respect to also having domain expertise also to kind of plugged into. Now, the reason being that it is a convergence of three different streams. The traditional computer science stream where we're talking about software development, and also with respect to math and statistics where we have
Ma'am, your audio is down actually.
Yes, sir. Nabil sir, audio is not coming.
Yeah.
Whether she know it?
So can you contact her, sir?
Just wait for a second. Her net is down, so she's logging in again back. She came back
sir,
again.
I'm dialed in back, sir.
Okay,
I'm so
thank you,
sorry
thank you.
for the disconnect again.
Yeah, you can continue.
Can you kind of pull out the previous ID, sir? I'll start sharing again.
Actually, your presentation is now visible to us, ma'am. Like, your slide.
I think it got stuck with the previous one, sir. I'm not able to kind of share again.
Nabil, sir?
Just a minute. Nitin is working on it.
Ma'am, you can just try, ma'am.
Nitin, sir, you'll have to disable the
Yes, sir. Can you see the screens now?
It's in the whole screen only, like, the Venn diagram.
Venn diagram. Has it moved to the next screen, sir?
No, ma'am. It does not move to the next screen.
Okay. Can you kind of pull out the ID, sir? The sharing from the previous.
Yeah,
Yeah, now
can
it is moving.
Now it's moving? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
I'm extremely sorry. There's been a disruption, and from the backup, it is kind of moved to the normal now. So it
Yeah, now it's
again
moving.
kind of shut.
You can continue.
Okay, sir. All right. So I was talking about the Venn diagram, where we are talking about an intersection between three different streams: computer science, math, and statistics, and the domain knowledge as well. Now, if you're looking at it, the intersection of all three is what data science is. So it means that we have to have a skill that is crossing over all these three streams, if not to the depth, but at least we should be able to kind of understand. And when we are talking about data science, it's not just data scientist as the only role. There are multiple other roles as well, and it is bucketed over here across different aspects. Like from the technology angle, if you're looking, you could be a data engineer, data architect, or a software engineer. Now from the statistic angle, if you're looking, you could have these roles, and data scientist being one of that. From the business angle and from the management angle. So there are multiple roles. So it's not that you need to be specialized in all of these, but it would be good to have so it's the ideal thing is to get started is to identify what role are you aspiring for, and accordingly have the skills that is needed for the respective roles. Now we'll look into what are the skills a data scientist should have, and then we'll kind of drill down to. Okay. And here's a small depiction of what the kind of typical salary brackets that are out there right now with Glassdoor and Analytics India Mags. I've taken references from them. As you're seeing, we are seeing that at least a 40% higher range compared to the regular software engineering jobs that we are seeing. That's where we are seeing a little bit of a kind of also hype and the attraction coming towards. And right now, as for respective roles, I've kind of listed out what the salary packages are. Now with every role that we are looking at, we are also seeing that they have to have this analytics skills as well. So it's not going to kind of be just in vain to kind of look into specific roles. And even if you're kind of blending from another role aspect as well, some knowledge of this will definitely help. Say, for example, if you're a product manager and now you're looking at kind of working on a product which is having an analytics strategy plugged in. So an understanding of this streams will help a lot. That is what kind of we are kind of seeing in the market right now. Now, while it could be condensed to a more of a predictive and a prescriptive flavor of analytics, it's not just that. Like the ones that we are seeing in Amazon's and the Flipkart, right? The people who bought this also bought these items. And even if we didn't have an intuition of buying it, we would at least second guess ourselves, well, maybe we should look into it, right? And how many times have we ended up in going and doing additional shopping just because of this recommendation that we're popping up? But these kinds of things are not just the only aspect of data science. It's gone far more than that. And you're seeing that this angle from business intelligence that you're seeing at the left bottommost corner to the aspect of prescriptive. This is at a very high level, macro level we are listing over here, right? So this is what we're seeing. But if we are looking at patterns, forecasts, recommendations, and how we can take it forward. Now, each of these intelligence approaches that are out there has a specific set of intelligence, and what it means is it can answer a question in a certain level. Now if you're talking about descriptive flavor of analysis, right, say for example in the sales analysis, if you're talking about which is the top most revenue generating product line last year, so if you have the history of the data and if you have to have the details about what these aspects are, typically we are tracking the KPI. So it's you don't need rocket science data scientists to do this job. Even somebody who can kind of understand the logic of it from the analytics standpoint, they'll be able to do. Now, so this is tracking of KPI, deterministic approach, and kind of operational in approach. Now, the next aspect, if you're looking the same thing, the question is different. It's more of a scenario-based solving. So the intelligence required is also changing. So it becomes strategic. Now, similarly, if you're looking at each of these approaches, it moves from being deterministic to probabilistic, from operational to strategic, and becomes more innovative. So it gives you the sense of tracking of on-road, more of discovery and all of that. So the skills needed for each of these differs. That's the reason I wanted to kind of highlight on this particular slide. Now I'm going to skip this because it's again a kind of a representation of the previous one. And what it talks about over here is the intersection of the approaches and the domains, what problems it can solve. So that's what it's talking about. And all that you're seeing from machine learning, like supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement, and all of that falls under this bucket over here. But there is a lot more that is out there, from the decision intelligence to kind of flavors that you can kind of play around. Okay. Now, when we are talking about the skills, these are the broader aspects of understanding the what these machine learning algorithms are, what are the common used machine learning algorithms, how do we take it forward with respect to solving it, understanding a little bit of coding, and having an understanding on the SQL database coding as well. And we are looking at scalable solutions and how do you kind of put across and with this data and move forward. That is something that we are also seeing. And also to kind of look into handling the unstructured data. And all of this today, we have tools to do that. So it's not a like kind of heavy duty load that we need to kind of put in, but the more crux is towards understanding of the domain and understanding of the analytic functions. So this is at a broader aspect. If you're looking, what are all the skills that we need to kind of hone? But if I can break it down, this is a representation of how the different processes are in when a problem statement is given to us. And each of this phase, right from framing of the problem to collecting of data, processing it, exploring, and doing in-depth analysis to communicating the results, all these are sequential steps. And again, there will be a feedback loop in that. And that's how a problem is taken and a data science solution is put across. Example, if you're talking about positioning of an ATM, if you have to come up with that, come up with an instinctive way of telling, like, what are the parameters to consider while we have to kind of position an ATM. So that if that is the kind of a problem statement that we are getting, right? Now it starts from understanding what are all the data that ATM actually kind of handles. Okay, it's a core banking application, it's the customer information, the networking data that flows across. The switch database will have information that it is putting across. So there's a lot of data that we need to kind of harness over there. Now we can't take the same data and just give the insight. We can't kind of do that. It has to be processed. It has to be mashed up, wrangled around, cleansed. There's so many aspects with respect to processing. Once that is done, then we look at exploring it. And then when you're talking about exploration, it's to a level of deep dive analysis that we need to do. And from there is when you can move into putting in predictive models in place. It's not just predictive models, but any kind of model for the per se. That's how we would kind of move forward. Only after we cross all the steps, then we move into talking about what are the results of the analysis that we did. So it's a sequential process over here. If there is any issue that we are seeing in the modeling, then we go back to the previous step. If there is issues that we are seeing in the processing, again, that these informations are not there, again, we go back to the previous. So it's a feedback loop. Once we do one cycle of the loop, maybe an accuracy level you will get. But that's not something that we kind of settle down with. So we look into increasing the accuracy level and moving forward. And that's the reason it's a continuous learning loop that you see over here. Now, what I wanted to highlight is each of this process needs skills. There are specific skills tied back to each of this process. Framing of the problem, until and unless you understand domain, you cannot do that. Collecting of raw data, so you should understand data management techniques. You should understand how do you process that. And then move into exploration aspect. We need to understand inferential statistics, experimental design, hypothesis testing, and all of this we need to kind of understand. So each of it that you see over here has a kind of skills that is needed. And that's the reason if you look at into this previous slide where we were talking about roles, right? So it's not just one. There are like analysts will predominantly concentrate on the in-depth and or more with respect to the communicating of results, and partially on the aspects of ML. They will not be involved in coding. But if you're looking at a data engineer, right, they'll predominantly work towards step 2 and step 3. They will not come into the other areas. A machine learning engineer will predominantly work in step 4 and 5. So it's a combination of certain skills that will be required for each role. Now, with that said, now we'll get into, so this is something very common you can kind of look into or stumble upon, like what are all the applications right now that are using data science and how much it is kind of influencing and all of that, right? Probably I'll skip this and get into more with respect to the aspect of how do you start now forward. Now, this is also something I think we have talked enough about this. Now we'll start into the roadmap. How do we move forward? Now, so far we have seen why there is a hype, what the stream of data science is, what are all the skills that are required, and what are all the different roles mapping to each of these skills that are there, right? Now, to get started, there are multiple angles towards it. What I've put over here is a simple with 5-step process. The first is to kind of look into the aspect of learning to code. Now, even if you're not so into programming and you're not very much interested into it, today all these programming languages are even more sophisticated, like our back old days of C, C++ and stuff, right? Now, for data science programming, the predominant or most preferred tools are Python and R. If you've already kind of soiled your hands towards any one of them, that's good. If you're still figuring out which one to choose, I would suggest Python to move forward, and that's something that we need to kind of understand. Now, there are a lot of solutions out there, a lot of programming techniques that are out there. So any basic course that you can do, you don't need to invest heavily in going and doing some paid courses as such as well. Today, there are most of the courses are also available free, and you would see a lot of YouTube channels which are kind of having structured way of explaining concepts and stuff. You can very well choose that and go. The best way to learn anything is to start doing it. So when you're, it's not just about all these syntaxes and all of it that we can, given a system and Google, you can figure out what that is and do. So it's about logical thinking and coming into the analytical play of it and putting across a solution. So practice a lot with respect to that. And that's something as a starter we need to kind of look into. The second thing is to learn to work with data. Now, there is a lot of data sets that are out there that you can kind of play around. You can look into GitHub's, Kaggle's, and you can see a lot of data sets that are out there that they're sharing as a part of any competitions or any solutions that they've already put across. What you can do is start taking them and kind of do your way of solving, compare it with what the others have done it, do a collaborative learning over there. You can also take, right now you would have seen, at least with the COVID, beginning of COVID, so many dashboards and all of that they started putting across. Data.government.in, gov.in has the data sets that you can kind of play around for India per se. Similarly, each countries, they have their respective data available for public. You can use that. And UCI machine learning repository, if you just look into that, you have enough tons of data that you can kind of prototype and play around. So it's not just synthetic data that you need to kind of play around, actual data you need. So you understand what are all the data biases that's there, how do you kind of clear the noise and move forward. This is something that we need to kind of start doing. So it's basically you need to answer questions with data rather than putting it across with just guesstimates. You're starting to kind of answer it with data pointers. What are these data pointers? Highlight them and give evidential statistics around that. So in that sense, then we need a basic of stats as well. Inferential calculus, algebra, linear algebra, all of this, a basic is needed. If you're already strong at it, really good. If you're not, it's not too late to even start. There are so many YouTube channels which can simplify them in a very, very interesting way and put it across. And online platforms are also available. For example, there's one channel called StatQuest, and amazingly they would have explained all these concepts and how to take it forward. So that is, if you get a chance, please look into these kinds of YouTube channels as well. And I can also leave a list of channels that are most or simplified and explained, and also with respect to some of the blogs that you can refer, and some of the leaders that you can also follow with, so you can get some ideas from what kind of work they're doing, how they're kind of putting things across, how they have solutioned it. You get an access to that when you kind of get into subscribe to their GitHubs and stuff. Now, the other aspect is with respect to start with applied ML. Now, while we see that it's a very vast stream, we don't need to kind of be
Ma'am, again, your audio is down, ma'am.
Nibin sir? Nibin sir, there's a problem in audio. Again, there's a problem in audio.
Yes, sir. There's some net issue.
Nibin sir, you can just reconnect her. She said she want to reconnect back to the session.
Hello?
Yeah, ma'am. Yes,
Sir,
please.
I've logged in again.
Okay.
Team, I'm extremely sorry. I think it's voluntarily, it's giving me some break in between for you also to drink some water and stuff. I think hereafter I'll start putting one more disclaimer that there's going to be some disruption. Never has it happened in the past.
No problem. You can continue.
Anyways, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So we're almost there. Just a couple more that we need to see. We were talking about ML, applied ML. So an understanding of how certain algorithms work and when to put certain algorithms for what kind of problem statements that we look at it. Like if you're talking about linear regressions, there could be a lot of algorithms out there for linear regression. How do you choose which linear regression algorithm works best in this particular scenario? That's what we need to kind of look into, and that level of understanding we need. And we need to kind of also look into how do you come up with scalable solutions in place. So that is also something that we kind of have to have a very strong skill at. And as you're starting to create, starting to build your skills, you have to look into that aspect of having a long-term vision into kind of, you are a data scientist and this is how a real world scenario is going to be, and these are some of the things that you will be tackling at, be it with respect to cross validations or error measuring, or so there has to be a progressive approach into that. The other aspect is more applications and more theory. So which means that you have to kind of look into a lot of aspects of how they have solved certain problems, participate in a lot of competitions, Kaggle competitions, hackathons, and also with respect to kind of, if it is possible, if you have a kind of very good understanding, you can start blogging, you can start going to meetups, you can start kind of looking into the communities that are around you, the ML data science communities that are around you. There's nothing kind of better than having a connect within your network who can help you and groom you to get better at doing things. So create projects in GitHubs, do a lot of participate in a lot of Kaggle. It's not about coming at the top 5 and all of that. That doesn't matter. All that it matters is for you to get more ideas into how better can you solve these problems and how you can kind of do things in a very innovative way and very efficient way and bring out scalable solutions out there. So this is another aspect. And the last one is to start building your profile, probably from day one itself. While you know that these are the skills that is needed, I would probably look at it in a way to look into what are the different requirements that is coming out in the market. You take a stock of all of that. You would look into what are all the roles and responsibilities that are listed out there. There would be certain checklists that they are looking at. You have to keep that written somewhere and start crossing that once you acquire these skills. So that is something that you need to do. And everything that you have been working on, GitHubs and Kaggles and all of that, you need to highlight and put it across in your profile. Nobody's going to ask you how a linear regression algorithm would work and all of that. That's theory. Anybody given time and given materials will be able to come up with this answers to it. What they will be interested is to understand where you have solved these problems. So look for internship in this process till step 4. And when you're getting into interviews, when you're exploring opportunities in this stream, right, it matters a lot to talk about where you've actually put all your skills that you've learned into play. That matters a lot. So that is something that we will be kind of, interviewers will be interested in looking at. And you can come up with ideas on how better you can solve a problem and how you have done it in the past. And if not, like I said, all these data sets that are our real world data sets, you can take, play around, do mini projects, put it across, talk about that, explain about that. So it's not about the theory over here, it's about the practical knowledge that you need to exhibit and highlight, and no one better than you can do that. So we need to kind of move towards that. So you need to follow certain kind of, look into certain leaders, data science leaders who are out there, look into what kind of skills they have, what kind of capabilities, leadership that they exhibit, then start kind of inculcating, instilling that leadership aspect into your profile. I'm not telling cut, copy, paste. I'm telling look into what skills they have and start honing that skills within you. And it comes with a lot of practice. So practice a lot of problem solving and practice a lot of, so you need to polish your resume and put across in that way. Okay, so this is in a crux of what are all the skills that are required and how do you get started from 1 to 5, and there could be a multiple sub steps under it to kind of there are certain things on, okay, deep, once you understand more of applied ML, then you can start looking into deep learning. That's the next step in that. So there's not going to be any point where you will feel so saturated on, yes, I know everything, this is what I can kind of bring onto the table, right? So there's not going to be any point where you can feel like that, because it's an evolving field and every day will be a new learning in different aspects. And if you really feel that you are kind of doing certain things, great, start journaling it in blogs. Let people also know what you are kind of doing. So it's a way of branding as well, to let your skills, exhibit the skills what you possess. So these are some of the takeaways that I would probably leave you with. And what we have seen so far, and what the world has seen so far, is just the tip of the iceberg, at the top of it. And there's so much more that we're exploring. We are moving towards decision intelligence. That is what we are moving towards, and that comes with a lot more of skills. So if you're jumping into it, let's kind of explore a little bit more and move forward. Like every other technology which has kind of changed the world with the right strategy, time, and space, this field of data science will also do that, and we are seeing that it is also doing that. So if we have to be a part of it, let's kind of get into the track to kind of move forward and learn it and kind of practice it. So a more of data science practice, skills practice is what we need. And I wish you all the very best, and may success be always yours and pleasure be ours in some way to kind of see you succeed in all your future endeavors. I'd like to leave with this note of Alvin Toffler, that to learn, continue learning, unlearning, and relearning, and applies so much more. It applies to every field, and data science is not an exception. So let's learn together and bring in a collaborative, a community, a tech community, and bring in innovative solutions. So here are all my handles. If there is anything specific that you want to address, please reach out, and please also leave your feedback. Sir, I'll open it up for questions. Back to you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry for the interruptions, multiple interruptions that we had.
Welcome, ma'am. So we have a wonderful session on data science. It's a very good quote by the Alvin Toffler, ma'am, which you have put at the last. And we are all here to jump into the sea and search for the pearl. Almost every young engineers here ready to jump into the sea, ma'am. Any question answer session, guys? Question answer. So we have some questions, ma'am, from the participants.
In the Q&A section, there are questions, sir.
Yes, please, sir.
You can see what are the tools used in data analytics.
So when you're talking about tools, okay, there are ETL tools. There are also visualization tools out there which can handle data analytics. When you're talking about data science, there are tools like kind of every tool right now has the adapters or the way that it can extend out to solving data science problems. like be it with respect to like Oracle tools, or be it with respect to the open source tools that are you're predominantly seeing. Even you can do ETL with Python. You don't need a kind of an extensive kind of tools like Talent or Informatica to kind of do data management. So there are n number of tools out there, and when you're talking about visualization, the most common visualization data science tool that is Tableau, and BI and other tools like Oracle Analytic Cloud. These are some other tools that are also kind of coming up. And we can start with the open source tools as well, like ggplots of R is also kind of, you can come out with intuitive graphs. It might not be as interactive and intuitive like Tableau, but still you can come out with it. So at this point, I wouldn't probably kind of get stuck with any particular tool per se. If you get your hands soiled in one tool, that will be a good foundational for you to kind of cross learn yourself in the other tool as the requirement comes across.
The next question posted by a student: why Python is preferred widely in the industry?
It is much more kind of evolved, and it has a lot of library files, which makes the programming much more easier compared to the others. That's one of the reasons Python is more preferred, and it's very user friendly compared to the others as well. And it's not just for the field of data science. Python is also preferred in the field of app development, integration as well. And I would say probably R was more like a foundational, and Python was one level above R to kind of take it to the next level. So if you're already learning Python really good, if you're learning R, it's nothing bad at all. You can still kind of understand. So for me, I learned it completely in R, and now if I look at Python, I always look at how do I do it in R, and this is how I do it in Python. So it's just the aspect of it's the same logic that we are going to apply, but how do we do it is what matters with respect to the tools. So don't get glued with respect to tools, look it with respect to the problem solving or how you're addressing certain things.
Next, can you tell us how much dollars should an industry have to invest for analyzing data compared to the hourly investment in managing data?
So can you be a little louder, sir? I can't hear you.
You can see the question on hourly basis. How much dollars should an industry have to invest for analyzing data compared to the hourly investment in managing data?
See, there is this aspect of 80-20 rule. They talk about 80% of the time is spent in processing of the data and 20% of the time being utilized for analyzing the data. What we are looking at with all the sophistication in tools is to switch that ladder into 20% of time in processing the data, 80% of the time in analyzing the data, so that you can kind of look into exploring and discovering data better. That's what we're looking at. Hourly aspect rates, we do not kind of look into. We look at an engagement aspect, and we look at the problem solving from an engagement aspect, not in an hourly aspect. Or probably I'm not aware of it, but if I can stumble upon something, I'll definitely kind of put it across.
Okay. Next one, what made you take this field for your career?
Mine was a very organic growth into it, because I started my career in business intelligence and analytics. The gradual evolution or organic growth was data science. And predominantly, when I started working with insurance and life science domains and some of the huge pharma companies where I work with, I was working predominantly on clinical trial and clinical data analytics. And there's a lot of patterns, a lot of correlations, a lot of interpretations of data that we kind of had to work to. That, and when this evolution happened, and when we were moving towards the different approaches of it, I was more fascinated and glued towards it. So that was a gradual kind of move for me.
So you are interested in bio data, right?
I'm sorry, sir?
Are you interested in bio data?
That was something that I worked probably 4 or 5 years back. Now, it's more of clinical trial data about drug discovery and patient informations, and talking about a lot of their trials, the drug trials and the insights out of the trials, the reports that they send to kind of all the compliance approvals and all of that.
Now, in the next question, I have noticed the roles and I was curious about what is an AI ninja.
AI Ninja is more with respect to a blend of being a data engineer and completely knowing how do you put different technology solutions into place. Say, for example, if it is a kind of an RPA kind of a solution that you're looking at, or be it with respect to an NLP solution like a chatbot solution that you're looking at, or be it with respect to a computer vision or image recognition kind of solutions. These are all kind of technology solutions at the combination of domain and approaches, right? So when you're talking about an AI ninja, he or she is a person who is skilled at bringing out solutions with these technical stack, who completely know where to put an NLP into place. While a machine learning engineer will talk about what algorithms to do and how do you do that, an AI ninja will completely talk about where you need to plug this and for what this problem can be solved with this kind of intelligence. So, and how do you do that and what do you do, that is also they come up with. So they answer what, how, and why for all the streams that you're talking about.
Nice answer. Next question is a master degree is necessary for data scientist as a fresher to become a data scientist? What is the possibility to become a fresher?
It is going to be an add-on, but it is not mandatory.
Sorry, sir. Panipan, sir. One more question. Mithun asked us one
I have had a big exposure on machine learning, and I'm taking up course to excel through it. Talking about data scientist, how can I link up with it?
Sorry, sir, I didn't get the first part.
I have had a bit exposure on machine learning. I am taking a course to excel through it.
Okay.
Talking about data scientist, how can I link up with it?
I think whoever the person is, they're already linked up to it. If they've already soiled their hands in machine learning, so they already understand how algorithms work and how to put certain algorithms to place, right? Now it's data science is it is like a superset, and machine learning is all underlying it. AI, ML, and everything is like underlying and stream of that. So you're already into data science. All that you need to do is, if you're doing a course now, you need to look into how you can practically apply into a business scenario and how do you can solve it. Because if you're doing a course, they'll give you all these capstone projects and trying to give you, okay, this is how you do exploratory analysis. This is how you have to kind of put across your problem statements and all of it. That gives you a sense of prototyping it. Now you have to look into how you can kind of do that in a real world scenario as well. So I think you're already on track.
Last one, what is the market for BI tools like Tableau?
Tableau is no longer just a BI tool. Tableau is more of a number one with respect to the analytics, visualization, and also with respect to story narration. So when you're talking about not just a analytics or a business intelligence or a data science tool, right? In all of these, if you're looking, the final one is representing data. Typically talking about how you can represent, interpret the data. So visualization tool becomes very critical in doing that. What if you have fancy algorithms, you have results, the p-value and the false positive and all of this you've kind of figured out, right? And you can't, for a business stakeholder, we cannot go and talk in terms of the business. You have to talk in the business language. You cannot talk the technical language to them, the tool aspect, the statistics from the tools. We cannot talk with the business stakeholder. So a visualization tool becomes a key with respect to bridging this. And our minds as human, we are in tune towards visual representations, right? A simple thing, as we started learning from day one, we were shown an apple, and or a teacher would draw an apple and say, this is apple. Apple is red in color. Apple has apple would look like. Here's a green in color. So these are some things which registers in our mind faster than if you're just talking about APPLE, right? The same thing applies with all the business representation that we're looking at. That's the reason it is easy to always understand from visual representations rather than this. So when you're talking about so much of data, when you're talking about intent of data, the sense of the data, what you can represent, how you can represent in all of that, the best way to do that is to kind of interpret it in visual narration and storytelling. So a tool like Tableau is very, very critical in doing that. And not just Tableau, tools like Power BI, Tableau, or be it with respect to even tools like Click. Every cloud provider that you see has an analytic visualization tool. So it is very critical. I would suggest learn one tool, one visualization tool, top to bottom, you get mastered at it. The moment another visualization tool is thrown at you, it will be very easy. Say, for example, I started learning using a kind of a Microsoft visualization tool. Now, and then I moved into IBM, then I moved into Oracle Stack, then I moved into explore what the other tools are. Now, everything I do right now is always kind of underlying. I'll always think in my mind, how will I do it in Microsoft? Okay, it is called Matrix in Microsoft. It's called Crosstab in kind of IBM tools. Oh, it is called as a Matrix here in Oracle. It is just a cross learning. So it's a matter of time you will kind of pick that up. So it's always better to kind of have one tool, be it programming, be it visualization, be it data management, one tool to kind of have it very strong at.
That's nice. We have one more question. How can data science help solve challenges in cyber security?
That's a huge area, and that's a very huge area actually. So there's a lot of analysis research that is going on in that stream of cybersecurity, because it's very, very critical with respect to any particular solution that you're looking at, right? Now, there could be a lot of information that is coming out in these applications, these streams. Now, to understand the patterns, to understand the outlier, the anomaly in that, data science plays a huge role. And so far the patterns were out there. It is just that we did not have the techniques to handle it. Now with data science, you can handle it much more efficiently. And if you're somebody who is interested in kind of cybersecurity, ethical hacking, or be it with respect to ethical or trustworthy AI, these are some streams which are still evolving a lot and getting leaps and bounds. And if you're interested, I would urge you to do a lot more of research and come up with solutions and put that out there.
One more question, last. Is it possible to set a career only by learning a visualization tool?
Sorry, sir, you were breaking.
Is it possible to set a career only by learning a visualization tool?
You can definitely do that. See, an analyst role will be more with respect to a blend of certain skills underlying, but also predominantly they'll be working on the visualization tool. So you can be a BI developer, you can be a BI analyst and visualization expert and all of that. You can definitely do that. There's no harm in being that way as well. But if you're looking at it, if you've picked one, be in and out of it, be a master at it, that we know that, okay, this person is the only person we know that they can do things in a different angle. And how would you differentiate yourself from others is something that you need to kind of pick.
Okay, that's nice. We will have the end of the we will have the end of the session now.
Yes, sir.
It's
I
nice
enjoyed the interaction a lot. Thank you so much for the connections.
We should really be thanked to you, ma'am. It's a wonderful session on data science, and I assure that it's going to be an eye-opener.
1 minute, Panipan sir.
Yes,
There
sir.
is one more last question in the chat. What are the tools using this process?
I think we already discussed that, sir. Like, say, for example, say for processing, we have R, Python. If you're looking at collecting of data, there's so many data management tools that are out there. Distributed storage, you have specific tools. If you're talking about visualization tools, there are some of the visualization tools that you can use. So each of these streams, each of this process has specific tools that we need to kind of learn. If this is a wider list, I would say start somewhere. So
Okay.
as we go, we can kind of learn.
Thank you, ma'am. Kindly share this PPT, ma'am.
Sure, I'll share it across, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Guys, any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, ma'am. So it's wonderful to have you here for the session, ma'am. Your presentation was very wonderful, nice presentation. And I assure that it's going to be eye-opener for the young engineers who want to pursue his career, his or her career in the field of data science. We really thank your time and patience, what you have spent for the past 1 hour. And I would also like to thank our management, CEO sir, Director Madam, Principal sir, Dean Academics, Dr. Devasundari Madam, who really back up arranging all this digital series lectures, and HOD sir, Krishnamurthy sir, and all my colleagues and my dear students and all the participants from across the globe. And last but not the least, Mr. Bhairavel for coordinating this session along with me. And I would really like to thank Pavan sir, placement cell head, and then Nibin sir for arranging this webinar session. Thank all of you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
valuable
everyone.
time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Okay.